So this may come as a big surprise to a lot of you, but did you know that in D&D, fighters have subclasses? What? I know, I sometimes forget that myself with how juicy a fighter dip can be, but what happens if we just stay a while? Turn that dip into a main course. Lots of great things, actually, and today we're going to sort them all to figure out which fighter makes for the best meal and not just the best bacon garnish. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4 I like to take a deep dive into builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about these builds. I like to theorycraft, not so that I can tell you like the right or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both fun but also powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're just interested in theory crafting or looking for tips or ideas on how to build something you're thinking about playing, or if you just really like tier lists today, then welcome home. This is where you belong, in my home, and I'm really glad you're here. So thanks for watching. My name is Colby. All right, time to dive into the fighter subclasses. Back when I did my overall class rankings video a few months ago up there, I gave fighters the highest rank of any pure martial character, an A. And I even went so far as to rank them higher than clerics, which still has some of you a little upset, I think. Why do I think they're so good? For a variety of reasons, I suppose, but above all, it's largely due to the fact that their damage potential outshines any other pure martial, thanks to fighting styles, weapon masteries, action surge, and better scaling with additional attacks. While their survivability remains top-notch as well, potentially even better than the base class barbarian, but at least on par, I would say, thanks to better AC, some self-heals, fighting styles, nice boosts to saving throws, etc. In addition to that, the other three categories that I've been evaluating for, support, control, and utility, are as an aggregate as good as or better than the other non-caster classes, with maybe the exception of the rogue, who edges them out in those categories like altogether, sure, but who then pales in comparison to the fighter for damage and survivability, right? The result, I think, is, yes, a character who kind of just does what you would expect a martial character in a fantasy game to do. Deal lots of weapon-based damage throughout the game while standing in the middle of the fight, staying on their feet despite taking a lot of hits, who can throw out some occasional support, utility, and or control in and out of combat, especially if you build for it. They're just really versatile and well-rounded and scale into late game better than any other martial to boot. I think they're like the gold standard of design after which all other martial classes in D&D should aim for, right? Not that all other martials should do the exact same amount of damage and have the same level of survivability necessarily, but that they should maybe get a little closer in those areas, potentially, I think, sacrificing a little, not a lot, in damage and survivability if they're going to be a little better in the support, control, and or utility departments, yeah? My opinion. Right now, I think fighter just outshines the rest of the pack for excelling at what you want them to excel at and still bring a little bit of the whole package, especially if you build for it. And yeah, I still think they're just a little bit more potent, generally speaking, all things considered, than even some other spellcasters like the ranger and the cleric, personally. So what happens when we bring subclasses into the mix? Are we going to have fighter options that outscale even some bard and druid subclasses? Well, maybe. Let's dive into each official Wizards of the Coast subclass and find out, shall we? I proudly present, what do we call this? Fight Club, the Rank and File, the Chain of Command, Martial Meritocracy, All-Nighter, Assessing the Armory, Sorting the Soldiers, Which Bacon is Best, Jack of All Blades. Fighters have subclasses? Yes. Thanks as always to everyone in the Discord channel for the fantastic suggestions. Today, I think I'm going to go with the one suggested by Damask, Tactical Selection, ranking the fighter subclasses. I'm really a sucker for those plays on selection, aren't I? I was like 3 out of 5 of the subclass titles now. Anyways, huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for this sort of quintessential fighter today. I love what he does. He's so talented. If you'd be interested in checking out the other artwork that he creates, or even potentially trying to reach out to commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I will put links in the video description as always on how to do so. But first, here's a question. Is there anything worse than wanting to play D&D, maybe even planning on playing D&D, and then suddenly, unexpectedly, game night gets canceled? Actually, yeah, I can think of something worse, not having a group to play D&D with in the first place. Well, happy news for those of us suffering from this greatest of catastrophes. Obvious Mimic, the sponsor for today's video. In case you hadn't heard, Obvious Mimic makes the best solo D&D adventures the world has ever seen. And their latest, The Streets of Port Noir, is finally ready after a massively successful crowdfunding campaign for you to order and play. This particular adventure, filled with mystery, a criminal underworld, and a hard-boiled attempt to save a city, works just like all of their other solo D&D adventures: The Wolves of Langston, The Crystals of Zaleth, The Secret of Oni Island, and The Mystery of Witch Haven, where you make a character, get the book, open it up, start reading, start making choices, and start playing. Yes, you're rolling dice. Yes, your actions have consequences. Yes, you will gain loot, unravel an interesting story, solve mysteries, vanquish foes, and level up. Unless you die, of course, which you might do. But regardless, you will be entertained. And you can do it all at your own pace, according to your own schedule, where and when and as often as you want, whether it's to fill the gap between sessions with your friends, or to take a break as a forever DM, or to test out that new character you've built to see if they work as well in practice as they do in your head. Yeah, that's me right there. Obvious Mimic is such a great company. They have a Discord you can join to playtest and offer feedback, among other things, and even a wonderful line of D&D themed t-shirts that you often catch me wearing on camera. So I hope you'll check them out and do something to fill your life with just a little more D&D goodness. When you do, please use the link that I've put in the video description in the pinned comment so that they know I sent you. And hey, I forgot to mention this last time, but if you use my code Colby10 at checkout, you'll actually save 10% off of your order. So do yourself a favor and go order an adventure for basically the cost of lunch. I mean, at that price, maybe order 3 and take your character through a mini solo campaign, yeah? Okay, huge thanks to Obvious Mimic. I have missed having you guys. Congrats on getting Port Noir across the finish line. I can't wait to see what you cook up next. Okay, let's get back to the rankings. Okay, up first, the class that to me has the biggest gap between this feels so cool and actual mechanical power, the oft maligned but hopefully soon improved Arcane Archer. And yes, just so you know, at the time of this recording, the Arcane Archer has not been updated. I'm pretty sure they're going to be before the end of this year in an official book, but for now, we're just dealing with what we got. I'm not going to look at the Unearthed Arcana version. So, for damage, Arcane Archers get a little love, right? Their main feature, Arcane Shot, received at level 3, gives them a measly 2 empowered shots per short rest. More at level 15 with their Ever Ready Shot feature, though that comes very late. And yeah, most of the options that they get to choose for this Arcane Shot can help improve damage, none more so than the Grasping Arrow, which adds 2d6 poison damage on the hit, and 2d6 more slashing damage when they move, even if we move them, which is nice. As with all of these damaging arrows, the damage increases to 4d6 with their level 18 feature, but that's hardly worth a bump here since it comes so late, right? There are even some small multi-target damage dealers like Bursting Arrow and Piercing Arrow. Beyond that, their 7th level Curving Shot lets you use your bonus action to re-roll a missed arrow. It just has to be against a different target, but a chance to turn a miss into a hit is nice, and this feature feels really cool and cinematic as well, right? I guess I should say, you know, in 5.5, it sort of feels like Arcane Archer's got a stealth buff, simply due to the, like, crossbow expert sharpshooter combo getting nerfed, right? In 5e, the hardest hitting ranged weapon users were those who used a hand crossbow and took those 2 feats so that they could make 3 attacks on their turn eventually and add a flat 10 damage to each hit. The Arcane Archer's arcane shots only work with longbows and shortbows, and so playing one back in 5e felt like you either didn't have a subclass or you were using a weaker weapon in order to enjoy your subclass features. Now that you can't do the whole add 10 damage to 3 hand crossbow attacks thing, and also, now that Great Weapon Master works on longbows, well, Arcane Archers look a lot better by comparison, so that's worth noting. As for the other categories, survivability, support, control, the only potential benefits to any of those things come from the different arcane shots that you might use. Maybe you get a teeny lift from things like Enfeebling Arrow that might reduce enemy weapon attacks for a round, and Shadow Arrow that might make enemies unable to see anything more than 5 feet away. Those things would also potentially give us a little lift to support as well, right? And then for control, sure, Grasping Arrow can slow your target, Beguiling Arrow might charm them, and the famous Banishing Arrow might even banish and incapacitate them for a round. Definitely a decent little lift here. But there's really nothing in the utility department, and of course any lift we consider here has to take into account that not only can you only shoot 2 of these arrows per short rest, but you only get 2 options at the beginning anyways. More options as you level, but opportunity cost definitely has to bump all of these things down a peg, right? Outside of damage, maybe. So yeah, the lifts to everything are pretty minor, I think. As a result, then, I think we've got to put Arcane Archers into C. I'm confident that they will get a little lift if and when we see an updated version of them for 5.5. The Unearthed Arcana we got for Arcane Archers made some improvements. I hope they do go a little further for official release personally. And like I say, I think we'll probably see that official release before the end of the year if I had to guess. But until then, yes, they're definitely on the lower end of fighters as they currently stand. I think the Sharpshooter nerf and the Great Weapon Master working with Longbow's buff keeps them out of D, though, personally. Up next, the one that used to just kind of be the meme subclass, universally thought of as the weakest fighter subclass for sure, the subclass formerly known as the Purple Dragon Knight. Yes, we're talking about the Banneret. They just got updated in the Heroes of Faerun book. Did that update bring them up from the bottom of the barrel? Well, Bannerets are all about making their party better. I love the vibe of a support-focused, charismatic, leader-type character, but they don't get a lot in the damage department. I suppose we could consider their level 10 Rallying Surge to potentially bring some extra damage, since it says that when we Action Surge, our allies within 30 feet can use their reaction to either move or make just a single weapon attack or unarmed strike. Rogues in the party will especially love this, but yeah, you can only do it once per short rest, right? Action Surge, until very late game. And at level 10, it's already a pretty late feature for most tables, so this is a small potential bump at best. The only thing we could really consider as a bump to our survivability would be the level 18 Inspiring Commander feature, which increases the area of effect of our other features that help our allies and then gives us immunity to Charmed and Frightened. That's pretty nice, but it's very late, so an even smaller bump to this category, I think. But when it comes to support, this is where Bannerets really shine, and almost every subclass feature gives a bump here. At level 3, Group Recovery says that once per short rest, when we use Second Wind to heal ourselves, a Charisma modifier number of allies within 30 feet also heal, but for a D4 plus our fighter level. It's a pretty nice way to bring back downed allies especially, but the fact that it heals us too, and potentially others, is just gravy on top. And all with just a bonus action, right? At level 7, that feature is buffed by Team Tactics, which gives our allies advantage on all D20 tests for a round when they get healed in this way. I guess that could potentially be a little damage bump too, right? Depending on the ally and whether or not they would have had advantage on attacks already anyways. But then at level 10, that Rallying Surge lets allies either make one attack, as mentioned, or move up to half their speed without provoking opportunity attacks. That could be a nice way to help them stay safe, for sure. Finally, at level 15, Shared Resilience says that we can use our reaction and a use of Indomitable to basically give Indomitable to an ally instead. And remember, it's a lot better in 5.5, right? Saying that when the saving throw has failed, we use Indomitable to reroll, but with a bonus equal to our fighter level. And yeah, we can just give that to our ally now. And I mean, by level 15, that's going to mean an almost guaranteed success, though, of course, it comes super late, right? Anyways, a nice host of support features here for the Banneret, no doubt. No real benefits to our control, though, but utility gets a little love from our level 3 ribbon feature, Nightly Envoy, which lets us know an additional language that we can swap out with a long rest and an additional skill proficiency. And the Comprehend Languages spell as a ritual, nice. Take them all together, and where do we land? You know what? I'm going to call Bannerets a B, and here's why. If the fighter is already the best martial at doing damage and surviving, heck, give their support a healthy increase and maybe a teeny lift in some other categories, and they just feel really well-rounded to me. None of the support features are insanely powerful or anything, but they're solid. And it just makes a fighter now quite good at everything we're ranking for in combat, at least, aside from control maybe. Gosh, I'm almost tempted to give him an A, honestly. But nah, there are more powerful options, for sure. You know who's an even better support than Bannerets, though? My channel members and patrons. Let me just give them a quick shout out, if you don't mind. You guys, thank you so much for your support. It means everything to me. I'm so lucky to be able to do what I do for a living, and it's because of you that I can do it. So thank you. If you're not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you just consider becoming one. There's a button down there. It says join. If you click on it or check the Patreon link in my video description, you will learn about all of the perks that I offer to my channel members and patrons. Those include access to the library of write-ups that I do for like my weekly builds, right? So that you can recreate them yourself a little more easily. Access to the community Discord server and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we have. I give all of my perks to all of my members and patrons, regardless of like the level that they sign up for, just so long as it's like silver or higher. And I just ask that you pay what you think it's worth and what you feel you can afford. But yeah, if you don't think it's worth even that and or don't feel like you can afford it, that's fine. I'm happy that you're here watching, liking, subscribing. Those are all great ways to support the channel too, so thanks. Up next, the most oft used subclass on my most oft used class in all of my builds, the Battlemaster. Are fighters my most oft used class in all of my builds? If you count total levels taken, maybe not, but if you count just how often a class gets used, then yeah. And I don't think it's very close. Someone actually put together a little spreadsheet on this a while ago, and I can't seem to find it, but it was kind of funny, actually, to see how many builds had a level or 2, or sometimes 3 or 4 in Fighter. And yes, like Monty from the Dungeon Dude said all those years ago, fighters are the bacon of D&D. They just go with everything. And you get so much out of a level or 2, as we've often discussed, but no fighter subclass gives you more for just 3 little levels than the Battlemaster, in my opinion. Because those maneuvers that Battlemasters get just give you so many toys to play with and things to build around. A lot of people have argued that all fighters should just get Battlemaster maneuvers as like a default class ability, and I can't say I disagree with them. It would definitely give a big power lift to the already, in my opinion, strongest pure martial in the game. So yeah, had Wizards of the Coast done that for 5.5, I think they would have needed to nerf them somewhere else, or better yet, of course, in my never satisfied opinion, buffed other martials a lot more to bring them up to the same level, right? But in our fighter rankings that we're doing today, do those maneuver toys make them the best, strongest fighter of them all? The best bacon, nay, the fatback of fighters? Why don't they just throw in Harry while they're at it?
Some delicious Harry fatback.
Are they the best? Let's find out. Well, for damage, yes, there is a lot that Battlemasters get, right? First of all, their level 3 feature, the main event, combat superiority, yes, lets us choose 3 maneuvers, more at higher levels, that we can use our superiority dice on. We get 4 of them right away, more at higher levels, and they're D8s at the beginning, though they will scale up as well. Yay, scaling. Anyways, we get them all back on a short rest, and lots of the options can increase our damage, usually by just adding that superiority die to the damage we deal with an attack, except in the case of precision attack, which could turn a miss into a hit. That's lovely. But then also, plenty of those maneuvers do extra things that might further increase our damage, like trip attack, which could knock an enemy prone and then give advantage on melee attacks, right? Or even things like riposte and brace that would potentially let you make a reaction attack on your turn, thus increasing your damage, or even Commander's Strike, which would let an ally make an attack with their reaction, the favorite of rogues the world over. I think we could say that the level 7 feature, Know Your Enemy, could give a damage bump too, since it lets you use a bonus action once per day, or more if you spend a die for it, to know a creature's immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities, which, yeah, will help your party deal more damage by avoiding bad things and or taking advantage of the good, right? At level 15, Relentless might give a bump too, depending largely on your table and the length and frequency of your combat encounters, since it lets us just roll a d8 and use that in place of burning a superiority die, which would be a d10 by that level, right? Once per turn. More maneuvers often means more damage. So yeah, a solid damage lift for Battle Masters, no doubt. And then, yeah, like Arcane Archer, but better, most of the other categories are just going to get potential lifts based on what maneuvers we might otherwise be using. So survivability might get a bump thanks to maneuvers like Menacing Attack, which might frighten an enemy and keep them from moving closer to you and give them disadvantage on their attacks, right? Or Parry, which can cause an enemy's hit to do less damage, or Evasive Footwork, which can let you disengage as a bonus action and bump your armor class for a round. And the same thing goes for support, since maneuvers like Bait and Switch can let you swap places with an ally to get them out of harm's way. Goading Attack can put a soft taunt on enemies, making them more likely to attack you, since they'd have disadvantage on attacks against your allies, right? And Rally, that can give some temporary hit points to an ally. For control, we've mentioned Trip and Menacing Attack, but Pushing Attack can knock an enemy 15 feet away. And then there are even some utility-based maneuvers like Ambush to give a buff to stealth checks, Commanding Presence to improve charisma checks, and Tactical Assessment to buff history, investigation, or insight checks. What's more, at level 3, the Student of War feature gives us an extra tool and skill proficiency. So, yeah, all things considered, I mean, you gotta go S for Battle Master, right? They get lifts to everything. Now, to be fair, yes, there's opportunity cost here, right? You can't have all the maneuvers and you have a limited number of superiority dice, but I think just the sheer versatility and fact that you really are likely to just get some lifts across the board, or maybe like big lifts to one or two categories of your choice, probably damage and support or survivability for most of us, I think. It elevates them to the top of the bacon pile. Will they stay at the very top? That's the question. Let's keep going and find out. Up next, the mounted expert, the knight in shining armor, the most genteel of all subclasses, the Cavalier. That subclass that always makes me go, man, I wish mounted combat were better in D&D. Even though there's actually very little in the subclass features that has anything to do with being a mounted combatant. But hey, they bring some pretty good stuff, honestly. So let's check them out. For damage, there is a potential lift here from our level 3 Unwavering Mark feature. I primarily think of this as a tank thing, but when we hit an enemy with a melee attack, we can mark them, and then yes, if they're within 5 feet, they have disadvantage on attacks against anyone but us. That's the main reason I tend to use Cavalier in builds, always tank builds, right? But I often forget that in addition, if the marked creature does still deal damage to someone else, we can make an attack against them on our next turn with a bonus action that has advantage and that deals a little extra damage equal to our fighter level. To be fair, this ability is a little meh to me, for damage anyways, because A, it's often fairly easy to get bonus action attacks if we want them, though it's no guarantee. And this does hit a little harder and a little more reliably, so sure, it's a little lift, even if we can only do this strength modifier times per day. Another strike against the feature, I suppose. Level 10 feature, Hold the Line, might give us another small lift, since it says enemies provoke opportunity attacks from us when they simply move 5 feet or more while still within our reach. This can be nice, since technically a creature can skirt around us but not leave our reach, and then still not provoke an opportunity attack by doing so, right? If they're just kind of sliding to the side. Or sure, especially if we're using a weapon with reach like a lance, and especially as a Cavalier we might be mounted, right? And so yeah, with a reach weapon, if they only move 5 feet away from us, it still doesn't provoke an opportunity attack. So I guess this might give us an extra chance at an opportunity attack once in a while that we wouldn't have otherwise had, but it's a small lift at best, especially since it doesn't come till level 10. The level 15 Ferocious Charger feature might again just give us a small lift, since it says if we move 10 feet before hitting with an attack, the enemy could be knocked prone. That would mean advantage on all of our attacks within 5 feet, right, as well as for other melee allies. And it's nice that there's no size restriction here, as there often is for tripping enemies, yeah? But again, comes late, and hey, your ranged allies might suffer as a result, so a teeny bump at best. And then there's the level 18 Vigilant Defender feature, which is amazing. Maybe the best capstone of any fighter subclass, I would argue. But it does come, of course, incredibly late. But this gives us a reaction attack on every single creature's turn except ours. Is this the only official subclass in the game that potentially can get multiple reactions? Am I forgetting something? Yeah, we're talking legendary actions for a player character, right? And yeah, multiple reactions for multiple additional attacks is amazing, But of course you can't move and make this attack, so it's only going to work against enemies who are already within your reach, right? And yeah, at level 18 it barely moves the needle, but if you can get there, that's really good. Okay, that's it for damage. What about the other categories? Well, for survivability, there's really just the warding maneuver feature at level 7 that says that if we or an ally within 5 feet get hit by an attack, we can use our reaction to roll a d8 and add that number to the armor class of the victim, potentially causing the hit to miss, and even if it still hits, granting resistance to the damage. That's pretty awesome, but it only works on one attack, requires our reaction, and is only usable Constitution modifier times per day. Still a nice feature though, and would give a little bump to both survivability and support, which also gets a lift from the aforementioned soft taunt that we get from our unwavering mark, right? But that's kind of it for survivability and support. As for control, there's really just the level 10 hold the line, which says that opportunity attacks reduce a creature's speed to 0, like the Sentinel feat. Nice when we can get it. And to be fair, Cavaliers might be getting more opportunity attacks than most other characters in game, especially at high level, right? But yeah, this is a level 10 feature, so again, only a small lift, I think. Finally, for utility, there's a bonus language and skill proficiency at level 3, the Born to the Saddle feature, which just gives us some quality of life improvements when mounted, basically. Not huge benefits, even if we're mounted, but it's not nothing. But then that's about it. So, rank for the Cavalier. You know, I'm actually tempted to give him a B, but I think I gotta go C. I was initially planning on going a little higher, but after finishing all of the subclasses and reevaluating, yeah, they're probably C compared to everybody else. There's lots of very little damage bumps, most of them in the opportunity attack department, but they're there. And then just kind of lots of small lifts across the board. And I really, really love that soft taunt, giving disadvantage on attacks against anyone but you by simply landing an attack on someone, no saving throw for it, right? No limit to how often you can do it. I just love the feature, and it's so fun to build around, as I so often do. I think if you could mark more than one enemy per turn, or if it lasted longer than one round, so you could kind of do it to somebody else next turn kind of thing, it might be enough for me to bump them a little bit higher, but as is, sure, I'll say they're just below average. And yeah, below the Banneret, though, both of them shine in the support department, but I think Bannerets shine just a little brighter there now. And the other lifts that Cavaliers get don't quite make up for that discrepancy, I don't think. Up next, the most vanilla subclass of the most vanilla class, the Champion. And hey, no knock on vanilla. Sometimes it is the perfect flavor to pair with whatever else you've got going on, so let's get into it. For damage, champions get a little love here. At level 3, Remarkable Athlete gives us advantage on initiative rolls, among other things, which will probably help us start dealing damage quicker. Faster damage generally means more damage, so that's good. Also at 3, Improved Critical lets you crit on a 19 or a 20, which can be really nice if you're going for a crit fisher build especially. Not easy to do on a single classed champion, but not impossible. That critical hit chance goes down to an 18 or better with the superior critical feature at level 15. Very, very nice. At level 7, you get an additional fighting style, and that might get used to bump damage. Seems unlikely, honestly, since you probably want to mostly stick to one kind of weapon and fighting style for damage, and then use the second one for maybe defense or support, I think. But hey, not always. Maybe you want like 2-weapon fighting and archery for times that you need to be ranged. I don't know. Level 10's Heroic Warrior is pretty sweet, giving you heroic inspiration every single turn, if you don't have it. A free reroll on something you failed once per round is kind of fantastic, and sure, might help your defense via saving throws as much or more than your damage, but it's a little lift to both categories, I think. So yeah, some nice little champion buffs here. For survivability, the extra fighting style and extra inspiration could help us out there, as I've said, but also Remarkable Athlete at 3 gives us not only advantage on initiative, but also strength checks, which could theoretically get us out of grapples easier if that's a problem. It also lets us move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks if we get a crit, which of course we will get more often. I mean, I guess that could be a survivability bump if for some reason we're in mortal peril and need to scoot after critting somebody. Or maybe this is a damage increase if that crit kills our target and we want to move over and attack a second. I don't know. I should probably just call it utility and move on, I suppose, but it's potentially useful in a few different scenarios. Finally, at 18, Survivor gives us advantage on death saves and says that when we get an 18 or higher on saving throw, it counts as a 20. That's sweet. Also, at the start of each turn, if we're bloodied but not unconscious, we automatically regain hit points equal to our Constitution modifier plus 5. 2 solid survivability bumps here, but coming very, very late, so only worth a teeny consideration, I think. For support, the only real potential lift for champions is that lift from the additional fighting style at 7, which could and arguably should be used to grab like protection or interception, in my opinion, which might give us a little support lift, right? But you might opt for a different choice, so yeah, a small lift at best. There's really nothing in the control department for champions, and the only utility bump they might get would, I guess, come from, say, taking the blind fighting style as that extra fighting style, right? And that advantage that we get on strength checks, and the extra movement from Remarkable Athlete that we've discussed. So, where to rank champions? You know, this might be the biggest surprise of the day for me. But thinking about it, I'm going to put him in B. And yeah, some of you might be shocked by this. Maybe not. But I am a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not particularly interesting. But it's hard to argue that champions aren't pretty mechanically solid. Advantage on initiative, heroic inspiration every round, more crits, more fighting styles. They kind of just take everything that fighters are already good at and turn it up to 11. Heck, I'm going to put a champion on my to-do list for builds, right? I've almost never used them, and definitely haven't for 5.5 yet. And their glow up was pretty nice. There's a lot of good stuff here. And yeah, ahead of Bannerets, I think. Though if you wanted a more like battlefield commander type, Banneret's a solid pick. I'm almost tempted to put champions in A for reals. But no. Up next, the fighter Gish. Surely, simply the fact that they get access to wizard spells will, all by itself, be enough to put Eldritch Knights into S tier, right? Yeah, let's discuss. Okay, before we get into any one category for Eldritch Knights, let's just say this. Yes, having access to the wizard spell list, even though you only gain spells and spell slots at the 1/3 caster rate, right? Meaning second level spells at level 7 and third level spells at level 13, etc. Even having mostly lower level spells for most, if not all, of your campaign will potentially, depending on which spells you take, give you a bump to any or all of the 5 categories. You can get damage spells, whether Shatter or Firebolt. You can get defensive spells like Shield. Surely that's the most oft-taken spell on any Eldritch Knight. You can get control options like Sleep or Web. You can get support options like Silvery Barbs if the mob will allow it, or Life Transference, right? And you can get utility spells like Message or Identify. There's an opportunity cost, of course, here, but I'm just going to assume at least a small lift across the board to every category. Maybe a bigger one to survivability since, yeah, Shield is just so good right at level 1. You're going to have it throughout your career. And so, like, I'm just going to kind of stop talking about, like, well, you could do this with a spell now, with an exception or two. Okay. Aside from being a 1/3 wizard caster, what do the Eldritch Knight's class features bring to damage? At level 7, they get War Magic, which lets you replace one of your attacks with a cantrip, meaning you could do things like True Strike or Booming Blade for a little bump to damage, or sure, throw out a Toll the Dead or something if that's your best option for range damage, for example. This feature is potentially further improved at level 18 with Improved War Magic, where you can now replace 2 of your attacks with a first or second level spell instead of 1 for a cantrip. But honestly, it's hard for me to imagine giving up 2 weapon attacks for, like, what, Shatter? I mean, we're still talking about damage here, right? Maybe in cases where you're fighting lots of squishy minions or something, but at level 18, I would think that 2 attacks from a fighter would deal more damage, at least to a single target, than pretty much any other first or second level spell you might otherwise be casting. For survivability, yes, the shield spell, but also we could get a nice little lift from War Magic here too, since Blade Ward is way better now, effectively increasing our armor class by 2.5 on average, right? Not bad in exchange for just a single attack at the beginning of a fight, assuming you're not concentrating on anything else. For support, there's really nothing here other than a few spells that we might get. And for control, aside from your spells, the only thing I can really see is a lift from the level 10 Eldritch Strike, which says that when we hit with a weapon, the enemy has disadvantage on the next save they make against a spell we cast before the end of our next turn. Surely the majority of the time we're taking advantage of this to cast a control spell, right? Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Suggestion. Again, hard to imagine hitting them and then throwing out like Burning Hands on our next turn. You're a level 10 fighter. Just keep swinging, yeah. Except maybe in rare cases of damage vulnerability or something. I don't know. I suppose that level 18 feature would potentially give a small bump to control too, since, yeah, if you're casting a level 1 or 2 spell and giving up a couple of attacks for it, it's probably a control spell. But that does come super, super late. As for utility, there's the level 3 War Bond feature, which lets you bond a weapon and always summon it with a bonus action. Great for times that you get disarmed or, thrown into the dungeon or something. And yes, the teleportation from Arcane Charge, though, yeah, that comes super late. So a small bump at best. Still, all things considered, it's hard to imagine not putting Eldritch Knight in S. Even with only cantrips, first and second level spells for most, if not all of their career, piled on top of what a fighter can already do, it just makes them better at everything. Newsflash, spells in D&D are good. Do I put them above Battlemaster though? Honestly, I'm going to say that it depends on your campaign. If you're getting 4 or more combat encounters per day, but with like a short rest or 2, I can see the argument here that Battlemaster's a little better. I mean, at level 5, the Eldritch Knight is still sitting on just 3 first level spell slots and a couple of cantrips. And yeah, cantrips are nice, but you only get 2. And rituals are great as well, but you don't have a lot of spell preparations, right? I think I would prefer 4 superiority dice and maneuvers per short rest, personally. Again, if you're having lots of encounters, right? But yeah, I think I'll leave him here above Battlemaster, since I think most campaigns aren't seeing that many combat encounters per day, and Eldritch Knights do scale a bit better into late game. But I'd still argue that it's a lot closer than most people think. And heck, some of you, might be feeling like Battlemaster deserves to be ahead of Eldritch Knights, and I don't think it's a hill that I would die on. Let's put it that way. All right, moving on. Up next, the fighter who is undoubtedly the smartest and, for my money, the coolest. That Jedi wannabe, the Psi Warrior. For damage, Psi Warriors get a little love from their main feature, their psionic power, right? At level 3, we get energy dice that work very similarly to superiority dice for Battlemasters. Yeah, you have 4 of them per short rest, and use them for cool things. There are just fewer things to choose from than there are for Battlemasters. One of those options, Psionic Strike, can deal extra damage to your weapon attack. So that's a damage lift. At level 7, Telekinetic Adept further empowers that strike to try and knock your enemy prone or push them 10 feet. And, if we're melee, we generally have advantage against prone enemies, so that could be a nice lift too. Your level 18 feature, Telekinetic Master, could potentially be used for damage. It lets you cast the Telekinesis spell once per day for free, and thereafter with simply a Psionic Energy die, of which you'd have 12 at that level, so basically a 5th level spell anytime you want it. I mean, Eldritch Knights don't even get 5th level spells, right? And Telekinesis is a good one. You could move enemies off a cliff or into lava, but even if there aren't any great hazards, they'd be restrained until the end of your next turn, which could mean good things for your damage and your parties against that target. Comes super late, but it's really, really good if you can get there. As for survivability, Protective Field is a level 3 option for your Psionic Energy dice that lets you use a reaction to reduce damage taken by the die roll plus your intelligence modifier. As for most of these survivability options, it would be a boost to support 2, right, since you can use the ability on an ally. I'd rather have the shield spell with my reaction, sure, but this is going to be usable a lot more often. And, sometimes you get crit. Sometimes shield wouldn't have prevented you from getting hit. So it's a nice option. At level 10, Guarded Mind gives resistance to psychic damage. Not all that common for enemies, but, this isn't nothing. And you can even end the Charmed or Frightened condition on yourself with a Psionic Energy die at the start of your turn, no action required. Finally, the level 15 Bulwark of Force is good for you and your friends, letting you use a bonus action to shield you and your whole party, potentially, giving you all half cover for a minute, which is a nice +2 to armor class and dexterity saves. Once per day, but again, usable with a Psionic Energy die, meaning you've basically got, at this level, a permanent half cover boost for probably most, if not all of your party, all of the time. That's incredible, but again, comes super late. The only support benefits for Psi Warriors are also survivability benefits that we've already mentioned, with maybe the addition of the last Psionic Energy option we get at level 3, Telekinetic Movement. This lets us use our action to move a willing creature or an object up to 30 feet, and that can be a nice way to get allies out of harm's way, right? We can do it once per short rest for free, too, which is nice. For control, I suppose we'd count the potential push from telekinetic thrust as a bit of soft control, right? And then, yeah, the level 18 telekinetic master, which is amazing, but again, comes really late. Finally, for utility, we've got that telekinetic movement in case we need to move an object, like, make C-3PO float above the Ewoks or summon our lightsaber to our hand. And then there's Psi-powered leap, an option gained at level 7 that gives us a fly speed just during our turn. And with our bonus action once per short rest, or again with a psionic energy die. So, it's hard to think of this as true flying. It's more like a long jump that we could maybe change direction in midair, right? We could fly up, attack a flying enemy, and still make it back to the ground safely before the end of our turn, potentially, unless they're really high up, because it does give us 2 times our move speed in, fly speed. But yeah, again, it ends at the end of our turn, so don't be stuck in midair at the end of your turn. This is useful, but it's not as good as most other flight-granting abilities in-game. So, can we give Psi Warriors an S, please? I want to really bad, but no. No, I think they're A. But I do think they're pretty close. There's some nice little bumps across the board. Again, if I gave points for flavor, they'd be S for sure. As is, they're just really, really good. And super cool. Okay, up next. What I used to always claim was my very favorite fighter subclass, the one I used in my very first ever fighter build, and the one that both Chris and I did a build for in our very first collaboration, Treant Monk and me, many years ago. Yeah, that was so kind of Chris to reach out to me when I think I had 10,000 subscribers, and he initiated that. So cool. Anyways, yes, we're talking about those giant wannabes, the Rune Knight. Are they still my favorite? I haven't used Rune Knight in forever. Need to remedy that. Anyways, let's dive in. Rune Knights get some damage love. Their main feature, Rune Carver, gives them 2 runes to pick from a nice list, and they can use each of them once per short rest to do some cool stuff. A Fire Rune adds 2d6 damage to an attack and forces a save or will restrain and continue burning the enemy. It's very nice. Good for damage and control, right? Storm Rune, which doesn't become available until 7th level, would let us or an ally have advantage on an attack, save, or ability check, but we've got to use our reaction for it, and then the rune is used up, so it's fairly meh for damage purposes, especially, I think, but still, it's there. The other 3rd level feature, Giant's Might, lets us use a bonus action to grow large and do an extra d6 of damage on 1 weapon or unarmed strike per turn. It's always felt a little silly to me that this would only work once per turn, right? It's I've grown large, either my weapons are bigger and thus hurt more, or they don't. But if it did extra damage every turn, it'd probably be too strong, I think. That's how it was in the Unearthed Arcana. What if it were just an extra d4? It might still be too good. Anyways, at level 10, the Great Stature feature changes that once per turn d6 into a whopping d8. Scaling at its finest. That's 1 more damage per round. Maybe at this level, we should just start adding the damage every turn. At level 10, that feels a little more balanced. At level 15, we get Master of Runes, which lets us use our runes twice per short rest, so could be a damage bump, or it might bump whatever else we're using our runes for, but yeah, comes late. As does the Runic Juggernaut at level 18, which changes our bonus damage all the way up to a d10. Woo! And lets us grow to huge size and increases our reach by 5 feet, so it's fun. When it comes to survivability, the only lift we might get would come from our runes. The best of the bunch, Cloud Rune, lets us force an enemy attacker to not re-roll their attack, not shield the victim, but straight up force the attack itself to just be made against a different target of our choice within 30 feet. And this is so unique and fun in all of D&D, and I wish we saw more stuff that was this original and different. I love it. And it can lead to some really incredible moments in game, like the time in that one shot that I was playing with the dungeon dudes and Chris, where I made an enemy who banished their target when they hit them with a melee attack, accidentally attack and then banish one of their allies. Oh, that was so awesome. You can watch that old one shot up here if you want. This is fun. There are other runes that will help us survive too, though. Frost can give us a +2 bump to our strength and constitution saves and ability checks. Hill gives us advantage on saves against being poisoned and against poison damage, and gives us bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing resistance, potentially. And yeah, Storm can give disadvantage to an enemy's attack. Giant's Might might help us out too, since it gives us advantage on strength checks and saves. Good to avoid and get out of grapples, among other things. When it comes to support, again, there are runes for that. Cloud Rune could save the bacon of an ally by making an enemy's attack hit someone else, right? And Storm can benefit allies. Then there's the level 7 Runic Shield feature, which forces an enemy to reroll a successful attack made against an ally, proficiency bonus times per day. It's kind of a poor man's silvery barbs, pretty sweet. For control, there's the Stone Rune, which might charm and incapacitate a single enemy for up to a minute. It's kind of a single target hypnotic pattern, pretty nice. Beyond that, I suppose being able to grow to large and eventually huge size will help us be better grapplers, right? Letting us grapple larger creatures than usual. And yeah, that's something I've built around a lot in the past, so I don't think it should be ignored. Finally, for utility, there's actually quite a lot for Rune Knights. At level 3, we get Smith's Tools proficiency and learn the Giant language, but then every single one of those runes that we can carve comes with a little utility bump, usually in the form of like advantage on a couple of skill checks, or maybe granting dark vision, or preventing us from being surprised. You know, there's nice little ribbons for each one. I guess there's also the advantage on strength checks from growing large that might come in handy sometimes outside of combat too. In the end, then, no, I don't think we can call Rune Knights S tier. Are they better than Psi Warriors? But I do think that they need to go in A. Just below Psi Warriors, I think. You know, if grappling worked like it used to, where you were making a contested athletics check, that might be enough to put them ahead of Psi Warriors in my book, since, yeah, having advantage on strength checks really helped them out in that case. As is, while those runes are super cool and potent, we can only use each of them once per short rest until very high level, meaning that Psi Warriors are just going to be able to use their powers a lot more often, not to mention that they have more options to choose from generally. They might not be quite as powerful, but I still think, generally speaking, they're going to come out ahead, like mechanically, right? Maybe unless you're playing at a table where you tend to only have like one combat encounter per short rest. So yeah, I think this feels right to me. Okay, last but not least, or are they? It's time for the most honorable of all fighters, the Samurai. There's a little bit of damage for samurais here. At level 3, Fighting Spirit says we can use our bonus action to have advantage on all weapon attacks until the end of this turn. But we can only do this 3 times per day. I feel like this is even less potent in 5.5, right? Since, thanks to weapon masteries especially, as well as, you know, species like Hill Giant Goliaths, getting advantage in 5.5 is easier than ever. Having this feature limited to 3 rounds per day, and having it cost our bonus action just makes it feel like, I mean, ideally you're going to find another way to reliably get advantage, and if so, this will almost be a non-feature. You do get temporary hit points when you use the feature too, so I guess it's not a total loss, right? But yeah, probably isn't going to do a ton for our damage. At level 10, when you roll initiative and have no uses of it left, you regain 1 use. Yikes. This is old school 5e subclass design at its finest. Just let us recover a spent use. Why do we have to have no uses left in order for this to work? It's so bad. At level 15, Rapid Strike says we can forego advantage, if we have it, to make an extra attack once per turn, and that's, I mean, making 2 attacks with no advantage is better than making 1 attack with advantage, sure, right? Either way, you're rolling 2 d20s to hit, but in this case, you might actually land 2 attacks, right? I mean, unless you're using Dex or something and have an Elven Accuracy build, then this might not even be an upgrade depending on the enemy's armor class. The feature still feels kind of bad to me regardless. Yes, it is technically going to be a damage bump for most of us, but it comes late, so it's not worth much regardless. As for survivability, there's the temporary hit points that we get from Fighting Spirit, 5 of them at 3rd level, scaling to 10 at 10th and 15 at 15th. At level 7, Elegant Courtier also gives us proficiency in Wisdom saves, which is pretty great. That's an important save, right? Finally, at 18, Strength Before Death is one of those if you get reduced to 0 hit points, you don't actually go down yet features, but is, in my opinion, way better than the usual you instead regain hit points, because it just straight up gives you an entire extra turn. even interrupting the turn of whoever like reduced you to 0 hit points. That's so cool and fun and powerful, potentially. And I mean, I guess this could technically lead to more damage. Yeah, maybe we should also consider it for a damage bump, depending on what you do with that turn. But hey, in 5.5, you could just chug a healing potion with your bonus action, leaving you with your action to make attacks or even disengage and move away. Hopefully you've got a healing potion on you, because if your extra turn ends and you're still at 0 hit points, then you fall unconscious. You can only benefit from this once per day, and it comes way late. But I don't know, bonus points for coolness factor, for sure. There's really nothing at all to bolster our support or control as a samurai. Utility-wise, we get a bonus skill proficiency or language at level 3, and a bonus to our persuasion checks equal to our wisdom modifier at level 7 from Elegant Courtier. That's not bad, but that's it. And it's not much taken all together, is it? I guess there's a reason I've only used samurai in one single build over the years. Are they better or worse than Arcane Archers, though, in the original Arcane Archer iteration? That's the question for me. Yeah, I think I gotta go D here. I mean, think about it. Up until level 10, where most of us are wrapping up the campaign if we haven't finished it already, your subclass features are basically advantage on 3 rounds of combat per day if you use your bonus action first, a few temporary hit points, and like wisdom saving throw proficiency and some ribbons. I think I'd take Arcane Archer over all of that personally, even in the 5e version, especially since longbows benefit from Great Weapon Master now, and advantage is so much easier to come by in 5.5. It's like a stealth buff to Arcane Archers and a stealth nerf to Samurai in 5.5. Plus, I feel confident that Arcane Archers will be in an even better place once their update comes out, like I said. I mean, heck, they might even be like a B subclass at that point. Maybe better. See what WotC does with them. So yeah, I think last really is least in this case. Sorry, Samurai. Okay, I'm all out of cards. What about Echo Knight? Some of you are probably saying right now. And yeah, I thought about including Echo Knights here, but ultimately decided against it. Even though they don't carry that like official, this is unofficial content warning at the top of the subclass description when you look at them in D&D Beyond, right? Like the Gunslinger does and others. Echo Knights seem to have been kind of relegated to unofficial content by WotC, nevertheless. They don't show up on the list of old fighter subclasses until after all of the like official Wizards of the Coast D&D subclasses. The Echo Knight used to be just like right in the mix between Champion and Eldritch Knight, so it looks like WotC is rethinking how they are thinking about the Echo Knight, and even though that Wildmount book was sort of officially sanctioned, they've kind of been put into a less than totally official place now, it feels like to me. So I think I'm just going to leave them off this list, especially since so many of you like to complain about how overpowered they are. And I mean, okay, if you want the short version of an Echo Knight ranking, they'd be S tier and ahead of Eldritch Knight, top of the list. They're probably a little OP, though. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'd put them ahead of Glamour Bards or Eloquence Bards, for example. So maybe not overpowered, just really, really good. Part of me feels like this is what a really good martial should look like, and every other martial is underpowered by comparison. Let's close that martial caster divide, people. Anyways, let's move this thing over to the bigger master subclass tier list, shall we? All right, here's where we're at, and just a couple of notes on some old subclasses first, because as you know, at the time that this video gets released, we've had some new subclasses, right? And some updates to some old ones that I have already talked about in previous subclass tier ranking videos, so I figured I'd take the opportunity to kind of move them around a little bit here. Yeah, I'm talking Grave Cleric and Spirits Bard. So I'm gonna bump Grave Cleric down just a few spots here, since the official update on them has them, in my mind, just in a little bit weaker spot. Not a lot weaker, honestly. They even got some buffs, but as I talked about in that little video that I did with Kelly and Monty the day that the book came out, I'm gonna put it in the top right corner here if you missed that. I don't think the buffs quite made up for the nerfs personally, especially that big nerf to their burst damage. So yeah, I'm gonna move them down just to below Forge, I think. Spirit Bards, on the other hand, got a big bump. They're better than ever now, especially with the ability to more easily choose what spirit they channel, or give bardic inspiration and take their chances with the spirit. So personally, I think I'm going to move them up to be just under lore. I could even be persuaded to put these guys into S right now, honestly, but I'm going to leave them here for now with the caveat that I might change my mind later. As for the fighters that we've talked about today, yes, this is kind of where I think I've got them. I will admit this exercise is getting harder and harder the more classes that I go through. Sheesh, by the time I'm doing warlocks, placing them here could take hours. I could agonize over each individual placement, and want you all to know that, there aren't a lot of hills that I would die on in the positioning here. I'd say this is more of a general idea about how I'm mostly feeling about the subclasses rather than I have thought carefully and considered each of these, and I know that I feel absolutely confident that this is mechanically and statistically where they belong. Banneret is 3% stronger than the Death Cleric, according to my calculations, or anything like that. I could nudge most of these up or down a spot or two, or three. And I'm sure I'll continue to massage this as I add more and more subclasses. In fact, I think I moved the Storm Herald and Battle Rager Barbarians down to D. I didn't have any Ds before. But yes, also remember that I'm trying to take into consideration the mechanical potency of a subclass when considered as part of the, base class too, right? So, for example, you might look at the Berserker subclass and think, they have way better features than the Arcane Archer, right? Subclass features. How can they be ranked lower? But I think about it more like, yeah, the subclass features for the Berserker are better than the Arcane Archer subclass features generally. And maybe if we were only considering damage, then, this list would look different, of course. But since the Arcane Archer is a fighter, meaning more feats, more attacks, eventually, action surge, fighting style, probably slightly better utility and control and survivability, etc., then yeah, I think their overall power slightly outweighs a Berserker Barbarian. But I think they're close. And hey, I might be persuaded to move either one of them up or down a notch, right? But yeah, generally, this is where my head is at on the subclasses thus far, and I feel reasonably good about the placement for now. So let me know what you agree and disagree with. I'm really loving this series. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's been a good exercise, if nothing else, to remind me of some subclasses that might be a little stronger, maybe a little weaker than I thought upon reevaluation. So I hope you've enjoyed it as well, but regardless, that's the video for the week. I love y'all. I hope you know this. I'm so grateful for all that you do for me and for the channel. I hope that you'll have a fantastic day and a really great week. And if you don't, for whatever reason, don't give up, okay? Better days are sure to come. I am confident of that. Hang in there. I hope that you'll do good and that you'll be kind and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. So let it go and so fade away. That song, just get chills thinking about it. I'm wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. I'm not sleeping. It's got to be my favorite U2 song. It's got to be the best U2 song ever. Come on. I mean, give me a better one. There isn't. I'm sorry. There's not. I don't know. For my money. But let me know in the comments if you disagree and what your favorite is. And we can fight about it. For the... In the advent... Wow. So, oh gosh, dang it. I've had this up all this time. I hope you, heck, I swear I put, all right. Hey Siri.